Hi, listeners, and welcome to Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of United States podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Bela Musitz. Mike, my co-host, is not available this week, so I'm doing this one solo. And like the last episode, we're doing a guest interview today, and that it is with part two of our conversation with Bob Forman, who's a very accomplished sailor, veteran of many Newport to Bermuda races, and veteran of two transatlantic races as well. So we had a great conversation. It was long, so I broke it into two episodes. And this is the second half of our conversation. So hope you enjoy it. We really had a good time chatting, and I think there's a lot of great information in here. And Bob and I have been emailing back and forth about possibly doing a third episode with him. And we'll see if we'll get that one done or not. But I think we're trying to schedule it right now. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. We really appreciate you listening in. If you like the podcast, feel free to send us a note. We can be reached at sailingtheeast. That's all one word, sailingtheeast @gmail.com. Always look forward to receiving your comments and suggestions. And if you'd like to support the podcast, we now have a Patreon page. You can go to Patreon/sailingtheeast. And if you would like to, you can support the podcast to help defray some of the cost of putting these episodes together. And again, if you like the show, if you like the podcast, share it or tell your friends about it. And let's get into part two of our interview and conversation with Bob Forman.
So most of the passages I've been on have been like 3, 4, I think the longest one was 5 days.
Right.
And you can sort of, if you time that, you can pretty much be guaranteed you're not going to get any big storms. You might get thunderstorms, but you can, weather predictions are pretty good for 3,
Right.
4, 5 days. But when you're going for, 18, 19 days, it's a crapshoot,
Right.
particularly in the North Atlantic. Did you guys use a weather router?
You were not allowed to use a weather router.
Oh,
Okay. But we had a satellite phone, and we downloaded grid files,
grip files. Okay.
which would tell you, is the weather going to be bad?
Yeah.
And it's really, the transatlantic is going in the right direction, and it's mostly a downwind race.
Yes.
So, really, really nice. Really nice.
So I'm curious. How did you bring the boat back? Did you then go down to the trade south to the trade winds and bring it back that way?
No, she got a ride home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Slow to crash, lift on, lift off boat.
I
So
got
she
it.
she came home in style, 15 and a half knots all the way.
So you had her transported back over.
Yeah.
Both times?
Excuse me?
Both of the transatlantic
Both of the
races?
transatlantics, yeah.
Yeah, very
They-
nice.
They left Southampton and they dropped the boat off in Portsmouth, up on Narragansett Bay.
Yeah. Oh, very
Yeah.
nice. Now, I also heard you mention while we were chatting here that there was a couple of Halifax races you were in. Where the Halifax to where?
It's Marblehead to Halifax.
Okay, Marblehead to Halifax. Yeah, very nice. I've been to Halifax, so I did a passage from Halifax down to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Halifax is beautiful.
Did you go aboard the Flower class Corvette they have there?
No,
They were
no.
Flower class Corvettes were like the backbone of the convoy system, and they built 7 of them in Canada. This one was one of those, and it was, if you read Cruel Sea
Mm-hmm.
by Nicholas Montserrat, Compass Rose was a Flower class Corvette.
I see. And so these are ships from World War II.
Yeah, ship from World War II, right?
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah. So yeah. Now what about? Talk to me a little bit about the difference in sort of your mindset as a captain from when you're racing to sort of when you're out for a 3 or 4 day cruise.
Much more attention to going fast.
Yeah, certainly.
picking the right place to be. Okay. And it's 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But it gets into, after a day or so, it just gets into a rhythm.
Hmm.
And you sleep for 4 hours, you get up for 4 hours, you go back to, and we split the watches so that two people would come up every 2 hours. So you maintain the knowledge from one watch to the next.
Yeah.
Or if you have to do a sail change every 2 hours, you have six people or 5 people on deck, which makes the sail changing easier.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And and again, back to my sort of cruising versus racing question. I mean, part of that's obvious,
All right.
but where do you sort of draw the line on speed versus comfort?
Oh. Well, on cruising, what I do is pick a weather window.
Yeah.
We look for a weather window, and that you do. We did use a router for, you know, on the Hinkley 59, which is the one we sailed down to the Caribbean. Uh, we used either Commander's Weather or Southward Bound 2, and you just be sure, particularly when you're going down in November, there's
Hmm.
some pretty intense storms, and but before you get to the Gulf Stream, it's cold, which means the wind has more pressure to it, more
Yes.
force to it. And we had one trip where we had to get going to Bermuda, and we watched it for several days, and finally we decided we got to go, and we had to get there was a low coming in, and we had to get to Bermuda in less than 3 days. So we went, and we caught every eddy and every meander on the way down. We came in Town Gut at 2 o'clock in the morning, and when we left the next day at 12 o'clock, it was blowing 50 knots.
Wow.
So we beat the strong winds in, and the same last not last summer in 2019, we sailed up to Maine, then we went to the Bredor Lakes,
Oh
and then we
yeah.
came back down to Halifax, and we waited for like when we were going to come home. I waited for a weather window, and we went from Lunenburg, which is an absolutely gorgeous town. You think it's like Disney World, all
Yeah.
right? Uh, it's roughly 500 miles from there to Bay Shore. We did that in 73 hours,
Wow.
and the winds are always out of some quadrant of the north, so it was mostly downwind.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. When I did my trip, it was helping a friend bring a boat back. So he had a crew that sailed up to Nova Scotia from
right,
Baltimore. They took several weeks to do that. It was sort of their vacation. And then
right,
he needed some help bringing the boat back. And we did Nova Scotia to Marion,
hmm
Massachusetts. So we basically left Nova Scotia, aimed for Boston. And, and we had a nice weather window. It was pretty much a broad reach most of the way down. And through the canal, bopped into Marion, spent a couple of days there, waited for a weather window. Then we went Marion to Sandy Hook through New York City, which was quite an experience. I don't know if you've ever been through the city. I mean, if you did the Round the
Oh yeah,
Island race,
yeah.
you certainly have.
I've I've got I've got a I have a preliminary version of a interesting film. We knew that there was going to be an intense thunder and lightning storm coming through the city
Mm,
as it got dark, and then it would be dark, completely dark. And we came through the city, and it was just amazing watching the lightning bounce from building to building. And
wow.
we were using GoPro cameras so we could take and slice it because the GoPro does like 29 frames a second,
Yeah.
uh, and see what the various parts of a lightning strike are.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. That must have been remarkable.
yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about these long passages, how do you how do you sort of manage crew again as captain? How do you manage sort of crew nutrition and rest?
What is this, on cruising or racing?
Either or both. We can
Okay,
talk to
both.
about two different categories. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like when we went up to the Bedore Lakes, we were gone for 5 weeks, which is, few people can get 5 weeks off. So I had, I had one other person and myself took the boat up to Southwest Harbor. Then Tom got off, and 3 people joined me. Okay. 2 daughters and one of my regular racing crew. And we sailed around Maine. Then they left, and 2 people, Dennis Powers and Jeff Matera, joined me. And we went from Southwest Harbor to Long Island. There's Long Island here. We had lobsters at Hunt's Dockside Deli.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went from there up to St. Peter's, which is at the entrance entrance of the canal into the Bedore Lakes. Then we sailed around there for 2.5 weeks. It's just a fabulous place. I mean, they have their own Celtic music. Alexander Graham Bell had a place up there, and there's a museum there to Alexander Graham Bell. And I always thought of him, that he invented a telephone, but he was into so many other things, hydrofoils, precursor to cell phones, and on and on.
Yeah.
The guy was a brilliant guy. I don't know. Then we did 2 more people joined me. My daughter joined me, and this John Sigler. And we did the Cabot Trail, which is around the northern part of the island, northwestern part, and it's just a fabulous trip. It's like the west coast of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 of the people got off then after that, and they went home. And then that group were with me to the end.
Yeah.
So we just have, crew meeting us, and it worked out well. When we were in Bedeck, 2 of them rented a van.
Yes.
In Halifax, and then drove up. We did the Cabot Trail, and then 2 of them left and took the car back to the airport in Halifax. So
Yeah.
it works out like that,
Yeah. Yeah. The and so what type of shift, what kind of watch schedule did you have on those trips on those cruises?
When we're cruising, it's like 4 on, 4 off.
Okay.
And when we're racing, it's basically 4 on and 4 off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it sounds like typically on your cruises, you'd have a total of 3 or 4 people on the boat.
Yeah, usually, or sometimes I do it myself and one other.
Yes.
Or sometimes I do it by myself.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about solo sailing. So I've delved into that a little bit last couple of years. I haven't done any overnights or anything like that, but just sort of, coastal cruising by myself, just to sort of, I find it's a great way to sort of hone your own skills,
Right.
and sort of hone planning and thinking ahead.
Right.
And have you done overnight passages solo or just day sails?
Just the longest one I've done is from Bayshore to Block Island.
Oh, okay.
I started early in the morning, and I was there when it got, it had gotten dark. But
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And I always find that coastal cruising, if you're within a few miles of shore, there's all sorts of stuff to hit.
Yeah.
There's other boats,
Yeah.
and you got to pay attention all the time.
Right.
When you're 10, 20, 30 miles offshore, you can,
Stuff to hit.
yeah, you can bop below into the cabin to,
Yeah.
go to the bathroom or make a sandwich or something.
Right.
So it really is, I find it much more stressful to be coastal cruising than sort of, 20, 30 miles offshore.
Yeah. The autopilot is the greatest invention for sailing.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It sure
Greatest
is.
invention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sure is. Uh, what other things should we talk about that I haven't asked you?
Uh, what we see out there, like when you do a transatlantic, you go way, you do a Bermuda race, you get offshore, and it's just a different thing. I mean, uh, first off, the sky, there's no light out there, so the stars just hang there.
The night sky is just unbelievable.
Right.
That's the only way I can describe it.
Right. Um, the wildlife out there, between whales, dolphins, you know, uh, turtles, sunfish, seagulls, other type of birds. I mean, it's really a great experience.
Yes.
I mean, it's a challenge too. I mean, in racing, you don't have the use of a router, so you're on your own, and you got to figure out what the systems are going to come in and when are they going to come in. Yeah. And at night, we've had some beautiful bioeffervescence
Yeah, we saw some. I've
plays.
seen some of that too.
Uh,
Yeah.
And I just, I don't know if the new iPhones that have some good low light capability, we could have filmed them, but we had a couple of really significant ones.
Hmm.
One was up off of Newfoundland, and the dolphins are just racing around, and they were creating these blue streaks in the water. You know, we had another one coming back from Bermuda where we had a significant amount of wind. And I say significant, it was really only 25, 30 knots. So we had a lot of little waves, and there was a whole line of thunderstorms that were coming in, and you could look and see that. And then it looked like they had, in each of these wavelets, it looked like somebody had a lantern under there,
Wow.
and probably some bioeffervescence. And it just, no matter where you looked, all these little wavelets had these, what looked like a lamp underneath them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It really is sort of remarkable how much life there is in the ocean.
right.
Even out, several hundred miles offshore, you go like, what the heck is that dolphin doing out here? There's nothing around here for miles and miles.
Yeah.
Or you see a bird, right? And you go, oh my gosh, that guy's been flying for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, we've got some great pictures of whales.
I bet.
Yeah. Great pictures
bet.
of whales. Yeah. In the movie I made of the Maine, Nova Scotia, Bador Lakes, I've included a whole sequence of whales in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So are these movies available for public consumption, or
Yeah.
is that maybe in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should you should put them up on YouTube.
Well, I did, and the problem was that we used some of the music we used was copyrighted, so it was up for about 6 weeks, and they didn't take it all off. They just took the sound off, which just takes too much out of the movie. Like the movies. Like the movies have 7 tracks, 2 of which are music.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And let me see. Did you have, given all of this sailing experience you have and these long passages, did you get any training or take any courses in weather forecasting?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about that a little bit. I sort of am not
I
familiar
just
with what's
I
available.
took one course in weather forecasting. I read a lot, and a lot of it was on the job,
Okay.
figuring it out. Okay,
Yeah.
like that's why I use it, the Hinkley 59 Roberta.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, I use that as my test platform, and that's where I tried out various software and got familiar with it. Okay, and then from there I would use it for racing.
So is this software you developed, or this is
No, no.
commercially available software that you would learn
The
how to
main
use on that boat?
the main one that I use. Well, I took my own laptop on that boat. Uh, the main one I used was Expedition. Was
Got it.
was developed by Nick White, who's from New Zealand,
Yep.
who's done several Volvo races around the world, Volvo races as navigator. Guy is brilliant, and you'll email him a question or something, and he comes right back, comes back shortly with the answer.
Yeah.
And then he even took some of the stuff that I had developed and incorporated that into Expedition. Like Expedition didn't handle the cruising situation where you got a motor sail.
Mm.
So I took and converted it so that it did that. And then Nick went and picked that up.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let me ask you a question. If someone, let's say, is a sailor,
All right.
and they haven't done a lot of racing, but they're thinking about, gee, maybe that sounds like fun. I'd like to try my hand at that.
All right.
What would you recommend what would a recommended path be for sort of getting into that?
Well, in 1992, we took the fellow that did the cooking for us, okay, and also stood watch. He had never sailed before. And I took him out on the Great South Bay one afternoon, and we sailed for like 4 or 5 hours. And Kenny had a great time. He did a good job cooking, and uh, we had a microgale, and it blew from like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, probably 8 o'clock at night, through about 6 in the morning. And we had winds that were probably like 40 to 45. I mean, the boat was flying. We were just on the right point of sail. Uh, uh, and then it died.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
often happens, has a vacuum behind it.
Yeah.
Like
So
by Monday morning, we were just 100 miles from Bermuda.
yeah. So what I hear you saying is that
And
find a person with a boat who races the boat and see if you can get on the crew with them.
most of the crew that I have on the transatlantic races or the other races we did, most of them were one design sailors.
Hmm.
They started off at the local yacht club taking lessons. Then they did some one design. All right. Some of them weren't. I mean, some of them weren't, but they had experience, and uh, particularly early on when we were doing the round Long Island races, a lot of them were just friends, and they came in, but they fit in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is amazing. Even on Narragansett Bay, where my boat is, I don't know. I can't remember if it's Wednesday night or Thursday night, or it might be both those nights. Every night there's a bunch of boats out there
Right.
racing around the buoys.
Right.
And oftentimes those folks are looking for crew.
Right.
And I think
It's a good way to learn.
it's a
It's a good way to learn.
great way to learn.
Great way to learn.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn and get some experience. And then, you go from the Wednesday night or Thursday night races to the
Right.
Saturday, Sunday race
Right.
to, some longer passages and stuff, and
Right.
kind of work up that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about sort of, knowing how to trim sails, knowing how to steer, knowing how to cook, uh, knowing how to be a Mr. Fix-It everything, uh, which sort of skill, if someone was going to hone a skill and be really good at it, and because they wanted to be crew on sort of a longer ocean race, which skill would you suggest they hone?
Depends on what their basic skills are and what they like to do. You know, if you get somebody that's a good cook,
Yeah.
you know, and they have a little bit of sailing knowledge, bless you, uh, or if you have somebody that knows something about diesel engines
Yes.
and some of the, water maker or things like that, that's a good way to get on. Uh, because when you put a crew together, you try and have the right mix of skills.
Mm.
Not only the right set of personalities that get along, but the right set of skills.
Yeah.
Like my daughter was in the culinary field for a long time, uh, and she did all, like, for the transatlantic races. She did all the provisioning.
Oh, nice.
You know, and I don't know, she 700 some odd meals.
Yeah.
And you got to get it. And she had a everything was like cataloged as to where it was, and so she knew where everything was. We did. She did a 6-day rotation, so every 6th day you go through what 6 different varieties,
Yes.
and then you start over again.
Yes.
Because prior to the race, what I did is I got 10 years worth of information from Commander's Weather grid files,
Uh-huh.
and simulated as to what I was going to see,
Mm.
both in wind speeds, wave height, temperature, rain, and things like that. Okay. Um, she took each rotation and put it in bins and marked all the bins and had a list of where all the bins were on the boat. Okay. I mean, we ate like kings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like 1/3 freeze dried, but she always doctored this freeze dried food, so it wasn't like another type of dog food. We had casseroles, like lasagna, beef stew, and then we had pre-prepared, like spaghetti and meatballs,
Yeah.
things like that. Okay.
Well, nutrition is really important just
Yeah.
physiologically, but it's
Yeah.
also important for your head. I mean,
Well,
you know,
again, safety, have fun,
yeah,
and
go fast.
uh, be competitive.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, we always, a lot of times we had an ice cream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Although I found out that gelato is better than ice cream because it has a higher freezing temperature.
Ah,
Uh, yeah. It's difficult. It's hard to get the shipboard refrigerator down or freezer down
right.
much below 23.
Yeah. So
22.
let's talk about power. That reminds me. Let's talk about power a little bit. What kind of power did you have on those trips on your Hinckley?
Uh, we had a 50 horsepower Yanmar, great engine,
Yeah.
and we'd run that based on what the voltage was on the battery.
So you charged the batteries from the engine. You didn't have a separate
Right.
generator.
I didn't have an alternator. Oh, excuse me. I didn't have a generator.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'd watch the voltage. When the voltage would go down to like 12.1,
Yeah.
we'd turn it on, uh, build the batteries back up, make water, all right, uh, and then shut the engine off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably water. The water maker is the thing that probably burns up a lot of amps, huh?
Not really. Only, I changed all the lighting on the boat, and
Yeah.
I've saved about 9 amp hours
Yeah.
doing that. And the water maker, it's about the same,
Oh,
9
really?
amp hours. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're pretty efficient, and that would make about 7 gallons an hour.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have 7
We,
people on board, so you need a
and
lot of
we,
water.
and it would make 7, and we'd use about 7.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
as a rule of thumb, we found that everybody drinks, between the food that's prepared for them and what they drink, and you want to have everybody to be hydrated.
Yeah.
Okay. They use about a gallon a day.
Yeah.
So 7 people, 7 gallons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, Bob, you just have this great wealth of experience. So
It's
you're
been
doing it.
fun.
I know you said you sold your boat about
Right.
a year ago. You still doing any sailing? Any sailboats still in the family?
No sailboats in the family. Well, my son's got a little boat when I go down to the Outer Banks,
Uh-huh.
go sailing on that. But I don't have any boats now. Uh,
Yeah.
and friends have boats. They go sailing with them.
Very nice.
Like I, uh, I had 3 members of my crew who got their own boats after I stopped racing,
Yeah.
and I worked with one of them in the last Newport to Bermuda race.
Oh,
Didn't
very
go on
nice.
the boat, but I worked with them figuring out where to go and what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me think of another question. So we talked about your daughter and, her skills, her culinary skills, and
Yeah.
the amount of effort it went into, number of meals for 7 people for 20 days or whatever.
Well,
And
my
how,
son, but I didn't talk about my son.
okay.
He is an excellent, excellent sailor, and he can smell wind. He'll tell you, I said, "Hey, Dad, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, the wind's going to go northwest, or whatever." And he got into sailing like when he was about 8 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, got into sailing before that. He went sailing the first time when he was uh, 15 months old. You know, my daughter went sailing the first time uh, when she was 5 weeks old.
Yeah.
My wife Jackie didn't want her going on a boat until she had been baptized.
Yeah.
But like my son's business is built around kiteboarding and surfing, so he's really into it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the largest employer on the Outer Banks.
Wow.
He he puts about 5,000 students through the school each year. He's he's got a restaurant, which is one of the best on the Outer Banks. He's got a store, which is about 50 by 130 and goes up 2 stories and sells all high end. Anything you want to buy about for surfing or kiteboarding, he's got there.
Wow.
Plus high end stuff like um, bikinis, you know, uh, wetsuits, uh, GoPro cameras, sunglasses. Goes on and on.
Yeah. So let's give your son a plug here. What's the name of the store and what's the name of the restaurant?
Real kiteboarding.
Real REAL?
REL. No, excuse me. Real Water Sports.
Got it.
He changed the name when he expanded into surfing.
Okay.
Okay. The restaurant is Waterman's Bar and Grill.
And these are both in the Outer Banks, you said.
And
What's
then
the closest town?
he's got like a boutique sports hotel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Plus he's got a lot of rental properties down here. So he's
Quite the entrepreneur.
yeah. Better than me.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. So, the question I want to ask you was, when you get ready to do one of these, let's say the transatlantic race,
Mm-hmm.
what goes into the boat prep? What sort of, because that's the captain's responsibility
Oh,
primarily.
yeah.
And it just must be overwhelming, all the things you have to do.
Well, let's start back at the beginning. Yeah, I wasn't intending to do a transatlantic race, although I had that in the back of my head, maybe some day I'd like to do it. And we were down in Bermuda after one of the Newport to Bermuda races. And went to breakfast, sitting outside, enjoying the sun. My wife slept in, and a friend, Jack Kaminsky, was there at another table. We got chatting, and he raced with Larry Huntington, who's a great sailor. And he said he talked about he and Larry were going to do a transatlantic race, and it was a 2011 race. So then I spent 3 months researching, what are all the bad things that happen to people in a transatlantic race? split sails, broken goosenecks, uh, you know, people getting injured, and also researched what the weather would be like, how cold it's going to be, how cold is the water going to be. Got the rib files from Commander's Weather, did a lot of simulation of how long it was going to take, and each thing gave me a little more information as to what I was going to do, because I found out that, it was going to take 18 or 19 days, and that's where we come up with a 6-day rotation. Okay. The temperatures are going to be, you're going to get some temperatures down in the 40s, which is pretty cold when you're out in the ocean.
Sure.
So that really determined what what everybody could bring as far as clothes, and lightness is godliness. The lighter you can make the boat, the better it is. And if you get 7 people on a 42-foot boat, you don't have a lot of extra room.
Right.
So, everybody was allowed 2 pairs of skivvies. Okay, 1 pair they left the dock with, and at the midway point, they put the 2nd pair on. We got like the top of I got like the top of the line foul weather gear. All right, for everybody. And then we worked on how many layers you should have.
Yeah.
What type of hat you should have. So everything was very, try and get it as organized as possible. Everything comes down to a list, an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. Don't leave stuff to chance.
Yeah. So now let's go back to what was your original question. So anyway, by September, it took me 3 months to do that.
Yes.
By September, I was ready to make a commitment.
Yeah. And remind me what time of year this race takes place from Newport to south shore of England.
Toward the end of June.
End of June.
I think the 2011 started at June 26th, and the 2015 started on June 28th. So
yeah.
which is a if you're going to have nice weather coming across, that's as good a time as any.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about it is it's mostly downwind, so you wind up carrying a spinnaker sometime for days. Like Larry Huntington in one of his races, he carried it for 17 days without taking it down.
Wow, that's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob, we've been chatting here for over an hour. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and being on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. It was really great to catch up with you again and see you again.
Okay. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Fun. How'd you like the movies?
You say movies. You sent me the articles.
Articles, rather. Okay.
Yeah. They were good. I read over them, and they were well written, and they were quite informative about sort of what you encountered and the challenges and stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
So I found them to be quite good.
I should send you a copy, of the movies.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, just send me the link and.
There's no link. I'll just send you a flash drive.
Oh, okay. That works. That works just as well.
Yeah.
Well, super, Bob. Great to see you.
Okay.
I wish you the best, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Okay. Thanks, Baylor.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye, Bob.
Will I get a copy of the podcast?
Yes. So I'll zip you off.
What do you do from that?
Ask that question again.
What do you do from here on out to make the thing so that it's reasonable?
So what I'll probably do with this one, since it's pretty long, I'll break it into 2 episodes, because I'd like to keep the episodes 20 to 30 minutes in length. I'll split it into 2, and then I have a co-host who's a other former professor, and he lives in Germany and knows nothing about sailing, because we actually do this other podcast. We started another podcast years ago about entrepreneurship.
All right.
that he and I do. And then a number of years ago, I started this additional podcast about sailing. So he and I will do a little bit of commentary in the beginning and as a summary at the end of each episode. So we'll have to record that.
All right.
And then they'll come out and I will send you the links when they come out. My guess is the first episode will be out in maybe a week or two.
All right.
And then the other episode will be 2 weeks after that one.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will
Yeah.
make sure I email
Yeah.
you that information.
I had a group of guys that we went to the President's Roundtable,
Uh-huh.
which is really an interesting experience. Um, there was 10 of us. We all had started computer companies.
Yes.
You know, some in the software area, some in the hardware area, and we would get together twice or three times a year.
Yeah.
Twice a year when the trade association met, and then when we would go away for a week with the wives to a nice place,
Yes.
and we'd have business meetings every day. And in a business meeting, everybody had a chance in the barrel, and you would go over your company, what was happening, what were your opportunities, what were your problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everybody else would chime in and say, well, you think about this, you think about that, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. And if you look at one incident in the whole thing that really turned a big thing around, one of the members, John Keene, had Keene Associates, very much similar to my company. Only he had started a lot earlier, and he hit a absolute home run. And he got up, and that was the first time that his company had lost money, and he was thinking about taking the company private.
Yeah.
The market cap had gone down to $4 million. And he went on and on about that. And then his other member, Larry Schoenberg, who had a company called AGS, said, John, you got to get serious. Do you have a hobby or a company? And went on from there. John went home and turned the company right around. And the Wall Street Journal has an article every year about which company provided the best stockholder return.
Yes.
For like 3, 5, and 10 years. John won the 10-year award.
Wow.
He took it from 4 million to 4 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Those presidential roundtables, they have various different names for them. There's a fair number of those around, some more formal and others less formal. And I think Bill Stitt and I used to do one back at RPI for some of the incubator companies. We'd once a month we'd go out to dinner and we'd invite 3 or 4, founders of incubator companies.
Yeah.
And
he was a good guy. I liked him.
Yeah, take them out to dinner and have a nice conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting experience there.
Yeah.
Stu and I worked, for I don't know how many years on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was on the board of Orca.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, the jacket
Flowtech.
boats. Yep.
Which it's a tragedy. CC left
Yes.
and Pharma left, which left Jeff in charge, and Jeff was not the right guy.
Yeah.
Not the right guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Bob.
All right.
Thanks again. I'll keep you posted, and I look forward to getting the movies from you.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
So, listeners, thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bob Forman as much as I did. It was great to catch up with him, and he certainly is an accomplished sailor who's had lots of experiences and done lots of racing at the amateur level, but still at a pretty high level of amateur racing, and has done lots of cruising around the east coast of the United States, particularly in sort of the northern parts of New England. So it was really great to see him again and to have that conversation with him. Hope you enjoyed it. So listeners, thanks again for joining us on another episode of Sailing and Cruising the East. We hope you found the conversation interesting and thought-provoking, maybe even a little bit. If you have questions about what we've discussed or you have suggestions, please drop us an email. We can be reached at sailingtheeast, that's all one word, sailingtheeast@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed the podcast, hey, hit that follow button on your favorite podcasting app. And if you know of someone else that would be a good guest, drop us an email and let us know. I'll reach out to him and see if we can get him as a guest on the show. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you all soon.